Football fans, something strange is happening in Washington, and it is the kind of strange that has an entire fan base bracing for impact simply because things are going way too smoothly. We are talking a superstar receiver jumping straight into live competitive reps on his very first day. Three key players storming back onto the practice field all at once. A perfect back shoulder touchdown that had onlookers convinced they knew exactly who threw it before they even saw him, and a kicking competition that is turning into a genuine runaway. If you have been waiting for the other shoe to drop on this Commanders training camp, you are going to want to stick around, because today we are breaking down every single detail from a practice session that left fans wondering if this team is simply too good to be true right now. Let's start with the pre-practice storyline that set the tone for absolutely everything that followed, because the coaching staff dropped some genuinely stunning injury news before a single rep had even been taken. Three significant players were officially cleared to return to full football activities on the exact same day, and one name in particular caught everyone off guard. A veteran defensive lineman who had been quietly putting together one of the best pass-rushing stretches of his entire career before a serious injury cut his season short was suddenly back in the mix far ahead of anyone's expectations. This is a player who reportedly attacked his rehabilitation with such intensity that he blew past his projected recovery timeline. And there is extra context that makes this comeback even more compelling, because he is currently playing in a contract year, meaning every single healthy rep he logs from here on out carries serious financial and professional weight for his future. The hope among plenty of observers is that the coaching staff resists the temptation to rush him, given the depth already sitting in that room. But there is no denying the man clearly has something to prove, and he is showing up ready to prove it. Alongside that defensive lineman, two other significant names were cleared as well. A starting caliber cornerback that fans consider arguably the single most important defensive storyline of this entire offseason, and the team's veteran punter. Now here is where things get genuinely surprising, because most observers, myself included if I am being honest, assumed these newly cleared players would spend their first day back doing nothing more than some light individual drills to slowly work their way toward full speed. That assumption turned out to be completely wrong, and we will get into exactly why in just a moment. Because this is where the practice recap turns into something genuinely thrilling for anyone who loves this team. Before diving into the headline news, let's set the general mood of the practice itself, because by most accounts, this particular session had a noticeably more relaxed, laid-back feel compared to recent days. There were still meaningful competitive periods, including full team work and structured 7-on-7 and 1-on-1 segments, but observers noted the intensity felt slightly more chill overall, perhaps influenced by a stadium full of fans in attendance for a special appreciation day, or perhaps simply because everybody in that building was buzzing with excitement over one very specific new addition to the roster. Interestingly, the starting units reportedly did not dominate practice reps quite the way they had on previous days, giving a few different combinations and personnel groupings a chance to get extended run. And now, the moment everybody has been waiting for, because Stefon Diggs did not just show up to jog through some drills and call it a day. He was thrown directly into the fire, participating in genuine competitive team periods right alongside the starters. When the offense first jogged out onto that field, Diggs was right there in the mix with the starting quarterback and the rest of the first-team offense. On the very first play of the day, the alignment had one veteran receiver working out of the slot while Diggs lined up outside alongside another talented pass catcher. And here is a detail that is going to make every single Commanders fan smile, because reports out of practice indicate that Diggs and that slot receiver were talking to each other essentially the entire session, and at one point were apparently already in the process of working out a personalized handshake together. Two accomplished, football-savvy receivers. both of whom have built their reputations on producing serious yardage totals year after year, already building genuine chemistry and rapport before either of them had logged a single meaningful snap together in a real game. It is exactly the kind of small human moment that makes you believe this locker room culture is about to get even stronger. What might be even more impressive is how Diggs actually looked physically on this debut day. Despite not being with an organized team throughout the offseason, multiple people who witnessed the practice in person came away describing him as looking genuinely different from nearly every other receiver out there, with the possible exception of that same veteran slot receiver and a promising young pass catcher also drawing praise this camp. Observers specifically pointed to his suddenness, his explosive burst, and the crisp precision with which he cut off his routes, describing it as an entirely different class of movement compared to what else was on display. Whatever training regimen Diggs put himself through while waiting out his free agency situation clearly paid off, because he showed up to his first practice looking every bit the elite competitor his reputation suggests. But the story does not stop with Diggs jumping straight into competitive reps, because that returning cornerback everyone has been anxiously waiting to evaluate did the exact same thing. Rather than easing back in with individual drills, he was inserted directly into the starting lineup at outside cornerback on that very same opening competitive play, stepping into a starting role opposite another cornerback while a different starting cornerback appeared to be given a rest day. In other words, this was not a cautious, tentative return to action. This was a full go. Straight back into live competition against Diggs and the rest of that talented receiver room type of return, and given how much uncertainty has surrounded this particular cornerback's long-term outlook, having him tested immediately against elite competition is exactly the kind of evaluation opportunity fans have been craving. Now let's talk about some of the other individual performances that stood out throughout the rest of practice, because there was plenty happening beyond just the marquee names. A developing young cornerback who has visibly transformed his physique this offseason reportedly won a strong one-on-one rep against a talented receiver, a genuinely encouraging sign for a player some fans had started to worry about after he had not exactly dominated camp the way many hoped given his new frame. On the pass rushing front, it was another strong day for the defense as a whole, with two different defensive players getting what would have been sacks on the same rep against the starting quarterback, though obviously no actual contact is allowed during this stage of camp. There was also a particularly electric rep where one of those same pass rushers used a blistering speed rush to fly past his blocker, continuing to build a reputation this camp for having an almost unfairly explosive first step off the line. Multiple sources watching practice in person describe these two young edge rushers as looking like they could become one of the most dominant pass-rushing duos this franchise has fielded in decades. An enormous statement considering how little consistent pressure this defense reportedly generated during stretches of last season. There was also a fascinating wrinkle involving a versatile young defender who flashed in a hybrid role near the line of scrimmage, batting down a pass on a well-timed blitz. Analysts watching this player develop have started to speculate that he could become the kind of do-it-all chess piece capable of rushing the passer, playing man coverage, and filling run gaps from an aggressive box alignment, drawing comparisons to a similarly versatile role that other successful defenses around the league have used to great effect in recent years. It remains very much a developing storyline, but it is exactly the kind of intriguing wrinkle that keeps evaluators glued to practice. Of course, no practice recap would be complete without diving into what happened on special teams and among the depth pieces fighting for their roster lives. There was reportedly at least one interception on defense during a passing drill period, with a bit of understandable confusion among observers about exactly which undrafted defensive back came away with the pick, though the majority consensus pointed toward one specific hungry young cornerback fighting to carve out a genuine roster spot. Elsewhere, a different young defensive back continued to get the better of a teammate in one-on-one and competitive reps throughout the day, while the same competing teammate also had a rough moment when the starting quarterback nearly threw what would have been his first real interception of training camp on a forced throw into double coverage, though the defender in question ended up dropping the potential pick after getting his hands on it. Combine that with the fact that this same player has reportedly been shuffled around between multiple receiver alignments and even given reps at punt returner recently, and the overall picture suggests a genuinely competitive, uncertain battle for that player's specific role on the final roster, regardless of how talented he clearly is. Elsewhere on defense, a steady, reliable safety who has quietly built a reputation for excellent ball skills throughout his career notched another pass breakup, continuing what has become an almost comically consistent trend of him simply doing his job well without much fanfare. Another cornerback come away with a genuinely impressive interception during a one-on-one rep against a talented receiver, showing off exactly why the coaching staff continues to trust him in big moments. But if we are talking about must-see highlights from this particular practice, nothing topped the perfect back shoulder touchdown thrown by the starting quarterback to that veteran slot receiver during a one-on-one period against a starting caliber cornerback. According to eyewitnesses, the throw was so precise, so perfectly placed, that observers reportedly knew exactly who had thrown it before they even turned to look at the quarterback, simply based on the flawless placement of the football. The receiver on the other end showed off tremendous body control, twisting around, toe-tapping the sideline, and securing the football while falling out of bounds. The kind of highlight reel play that instantly goes viral within a fan base desperate for positive momentum. Even the cornerback on the losing end of that particular rep reportedly felt fine about how he defended it, because there is simply no answer for a perfectly placed throw like that. Now, it was not all sunshine and perfect touchdowns, because the coaching staff did flag one recurring issue that has apparently been a consistent frustration throughout camp: an elevated number of penalties, likely tied to procedural mistakes stemming from the sheer volume of pre-snap motion and shifting personnel groupings this offense likes to deploy. It is a fixable problem, but one that will need to get cleaned up quickly given that the preseason opener is now just about a week away. On the kicking front, we have a genuine runaway developing in what was expected to be one of the more competitive position battles of the summer. One veteran kicker has been absolutely locking in his attempts throughout camp, reportedly connecting on somewhere around 93% of his kicks across the entirety of training camp so far, a remarkably efficient clip that puts him well above the league average accuracy rate from last season. His competitor, while still performing at a respectable level hovering in the low 80s% range, currently sits just below that league average benchmark, suggesting this battle may be trending firmly in one direction as final roster decisions approach. And finally, let's close things out with maybe the sweetest moment of the entire day, because as practice was wrapping up, the starting quarterback and Stefon Diggs walked directly over to each other in the middle of the field and immediately launched into what onlookers described as a genuine football conversation, using animated hand gestures that made it clear these two were not simply making small talk or getting acquainted on a personal level. They were actively talking shop, working through details, trying to figure out how to get better together. Combine that with the fact that Diggs had spent the majority of practice chatting with his fellow veteran slot receiver throughout the entire session, and you get a genuinely encouraging snapshot of a locker room that is already embracing its newest addition with open arms and a shared singular focus on getting prepared for that season-opening road matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles. So there you have it, football fans. 3 key players storming back onto the practice field all at once. A superstar receiver jumping straight into live competitive action on day one and immediately building chemistry with both his quarterback and his fellow receivers. A cornerback finally getting the extended high-level evaluation reps everybody has been craving. A perfect touchdown throw that told everyone exactly who threw it before they even looked. And a kicking competition that appears to be trending decisively in one direction. When you stack all of that together, it becomes pretty easy to understand why fans watching this team right now feel like they are riding a roller coaster that simply refuses to come back down. Whether that feeling of good fortune eventually runs out remains to be seen, but for right now, this is about as good as training camp optimism gets. So now it is your turn, and we genuinely want to hear your take. Are you fully buying into all this positive momentum, or are you bracing yourself for the inevitable bad news that always seems to find its way into every training camp eventually? Which storyline has you more excited, watching this newly loaded receiver room build instant chemistry, or finally getting real answers about that returning cornerback everybody has been dying to evaluate? And do you think that kicking competition is already decided? Or is there still time for a real battle to develop? Drop your thoughts and predictions down in the comments section below, because we absolutely love hearing from all of you. If this recap got you even a little bit fired up about where this team is heading, make sure you smash that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow and reach even more passionate fans just like yourself. And if you have not already subscribed, now is the perfect time to do it, because we are going to be right here bringing you every single practice update, every roster battle, and every bit of behind-the-scenes access all the way through this incredibly promising season. Thanks so much for watching, and we will catch you in the very next one.